Today, I want to give you guys a wide picture view, a big picture view of maybe about 5 things you want to consider before you start up your company, before you start up, a food company, dietary supplement line, or maybe your own brand. Now, if you haven't yet, there's another video that I posted on my other channel years ago that actually has given me a lot of feedback and a lot of questions and has helped a lot of people that are starting out. And if you haven't yet, you might want to check that video here. If this is your first time here, really quick about me. I've got a ton of experience in this space, over 15 years of work experience, specializing in regulatory affairs, quality assurance, and helping companies grow their natural health product line, their food brand, their food company, as well as dietary supplements. So like I said, lots of experience if you want. You can also find me on LinkedIn and be sure to hit that connect button. So I've got 5 things I want to talk about today that is going to help you when you're considering, okay, what you need to do for your startup. What are some of the watch outs? And bear in mind that these 5 things are just snapshots, right? This is not all encompassing. There is a lot of things that someone's going to have to worry about when it comes to building up their own food company or food brand or supplement line. All right. So the first thing we need to talk about is we have to determine whether your product falls into the dietary supplement category or the foods category. Essentially, we need to figure out what product or where does our product fit with regards to the laws and regulations, and which regulatory framework does our product fall into. You might be thinking, oh, it's obvious. I'm going to be making a type of bread or a new pasta or maybe a pancake, and it's a food, right? Which is true. But then the other element you need to figure out and also consider, well, what are the ingredients? What kind of claims? How is the product used? There are a lot of factors that are involved when it comes to determining what category your product actually falls into. And for example, you may have a cake, but if you start sprinkling melatonin in it, now you're outside of that food category because you're using an ingredient that's typically found in dietary supplements. So let's go another level deeper and let's just say that, well, is your product meat-based versus plant-based? Because a meat-based product will have different regulations, different types of enforcement versus a plant-based or a non-meat-based product. And you may be thinking, Brian, what are you talking about? My product doesn't have meat in it, right? There's no pork or chicken pieces in my product or in my capsule or whatever it is that you're selling. Well, the thing is, it's not necessarily that it has to have meat. It could be meat derived or meat based. So think of your collagens, think of your whey proteins, right? Think of your protein isolates, that type of thing. And so having something that's meat derived may push your product into that meat regulations, meat requirements. And whereas, for example, in a plant-based food or a non-meat derived food, it's a completely different ballgame. The level of enforcement is different. So for example, the non-meat regulations, is typically from the FDA that's got the oversight. They expect you to follow the rules. There's not the same amount of enforcement as, say, a meat-derived product. Where they're going to have people actually on site inspecting your labels, inspecting the manufacturing process, right? And the reasons behind that really comes down to the regulations and just seeing, okay, well, which product does yours best fit in? And they're going to apply those regulations to you because that's all they have, right? If they're going to use the regulations for meat, that, slaughterhouse, right, making chicken, they're going to take that approach and apply that to your product. Even though, yes, it's collagen, it's highly processed, you're stripping away a lot of the characteristics that make meat, but that's just the regulations it falls under. So that's what they're going to apply. And also you want to think about exporting requirements or importing requirements. If you're crossing the border, there are differences with regards to that. Increased documentation, right? Maybe you need different certificates. You need a veterinary to sign off on these documents. You need inspections to come in before the inventory actually ships out. So these are things you also want to consider if it's a meat-based product. And really what I'm just saying is you have to take the time to figure out where does your product fall into when it comes to the right regulatory framework, and then dive into all the requirements so that you're prepared for it. You don't have inventory sitting in the warehouse ready to be shipped, but you can't ship because you just found out last minute you need to have an inspector come on site. The next question I want you to ask yourself is, what ingredients do you want to have in your product? Now, there are some foods that, it's fairly straightforward. Maybe it's your grandmother's secret recipe for salsa or something. And the types of ingredients are, cilantro, tomatoes, various spices. Maybe you cook the tomatoes in a special way. For example, this is a food product. There's nothing too special about it other than the recipe itself is the proprietary or confidential piece that makes your product so special. Whereas for other products or other startups, maybe they found a really, really cool ingredient used in another culture, right? That's not normally eaten in North America. And let's just say North America is your target market. Or maybe you found something in the dietary supplement space, something that's completely brand new that you heard on Joe Rogan podcast or something. And now you want to build it into a food type product, maybe like a chewing gum, a candy, maybe some sort of beverage. You want to build it in there. And depending on which route you're going, and this is why it's so important to really dive into the details, you could actually shift your product out of the particular category that you were thinking of going into. So maybe you thought, okay, if I put this dietary supplement ingredient into a beverage that is going to be seen as a beverage, like a juice or something along those lines, or a vitamin water or whatever it is. But the problem is, as soon as you put that ingredient in there, and this is a novel ingredient, we don't know much about it. It hasn't been consumed in North America for a long time or at all. Now your product can be under scrutiny in terms of, does it have the right approval? Does the ingredient have the right approval? Does it have GRAS status? Is it a novel ingredient in Canada? Does it need more studies so that it can be actually safely added as a food additive in your product? Or does it shift the product altogether and push it into a completely different category? This is why you need to figure out what ingredients you want to use. You may realize that this is way too complicated and you don't need to put this ingredient at all to get the intended effect or the marketing claim that you want or the consumer base that you're targeting, and you can just pull it out. And I also want to add that even if, let's say, you are bringing a typical food in a different culture, right? Different country. And you're bringing that over to New York because there's a small community of you guys that miss that type of food that was typically found in your home country. You have to also keep in mind, is there some sort of novel status to it? Does it need GRAS status? You still have to ask these types of questions because the food may not have been historically consumed in North America. So there could be questions raised with regards to its safety of consumption in the North American population. So it's something to look at. And you may be thinking, Brian, my generation has been eating this for thousands and thousands of years. I totally get it. I just want to highlight that it could be an issue. And this is something you definitely want to work with a professional on, just to make sure that there are no issues, or at least you're ready for the questions should they ever come to you from, let's say, FDA or from someone else. All right, the next question you have to ask yourself is, do I have the right systems and documents in place to prove that I actually meet the regulations? And this is something you have to think about when it comes to your customers. Maybe FDA starts knocking on your doors and they're going to start asking you questions like, is your product safe? Right? Do you have your food safety plan? Do you have a preventive control plan? Like whatever questions they have, depending on the target market and the regulatory agency you're dealing with, you need to prove that to them. And yes, you could talk to the manufacturers you've used and maybe had a one-on-one discussion with them and they showed you this great presentation of how they comply with everything. But if they don't give you the appropriate documents to prove that, right, to test your product or to have these plans so that they're ready for you to hand over to the FDA, at that point, it's just hearsay and it doesn't mean anything to them. Even an email saying that you guys had that discussion isn't sufficient. You actually have to have proof. Ideally, that's test results. Ideally, that's manufacturing documents, perhaps a report. So it's really important for you to build the right systems in your business so that you have these documents on hand, or know what documents to get and have a policy in place with your manufacturer so that you can have ready access to it, so that you can grab it within 24 hours and send it over to an agency. So the next question we have to ask ourselves, and that is, well, what kind of claims do I want to make? For some of you, it's just about bringing the product in and having it available for a specific target market or community, and they know already what to do with it and how it's used. And for others, maybe you want to highlight a taste, texture, or other palliative feature about the product that you really think is special and differentiates your product from all the other ones. Maybe you want to say that it's healthy or it's all natural, whereas a lot of the competitors in your market don't have healthy variants or all natural variants. Others may be thinking, well, this one actually helped me feel better, right? I was sick, I had some sort of ailment in the past, and I ate this product or consumed this product, and now I'm much better. Now I really want to tell more people about it. I genuinely believe in this ingredient, which is completely fair, but now we're going into the requirements and the watch outs when it comes to claims. And this is something you have to really watch out for because it gets really finicky. It's highly regulated with regards to claims, amongst a whole bunch of other things. But a lot of people don't realize how tightly regulated it is. And something as simple as using the word healthy, right? Because we use it in everyday language. We all have a general sense of what healthy means. But the word healthy by FDA standards actually is regulated. There are specific nutritional requirements we have to hit in order for you to use the word healthy. And some companies didn't know that, didn't look into it, or maybe knew about it but didn't care. I have no idea. However, there are companies that have been hit with lawsuits as a result of these type of labeling errors. And one example, it comes with the brand, the Kind Bar, which we see in a lot of store shelves. And they use the word healthy because, when you look at their product, you look at their ingredients, it's a very simple ingredient. You understand the premise behind it. And they used it most likely from regular dialogue, how we normally perceive the word healthy. Whereas they did not meet the actual regulations or the regulation requirements of the term healthy. And as a result, they got sued and they had to change their packaging and their labeling. So you have to spend the moment to really think about, well, how do you want to market your product? And then work with a consultant or someone who knows this space to figure out, okay, am I at risk of not meeting any sort of regulated term? And the same goes for all natural. Even though it's not regulated by FDA, the FTC is looking at that term. So this is a completely different regulatory body now, but also adds another level of enforcement that you have to watch out for. Definitely spend the time and really analyze what claims do you want to make, what really matters to you, and then start diving into the regulations. Question is really from a business operations standpoint, and that is you have to ask yourself, well, how are you going to hear from your consumers? How are you going to hear from your customers? And the thought initially might be, well, I'm going to hear them from my comments on Facebook or my social media feed, Instagram, for example. Yeah, that's great. You're going to get some positive feedback and some people might not like your product. But what about those more serious issues or a real complaint about your product? Maybe someone got sick. Maybe they found a bug in your product or a piece of glass in your product. I'm assuming you would not want that on your social media feed. So you definitely want to start thinking about, well, how can they get a hold of you in another fashion? It could be email, a hotline, right? So you want to have a mechanism in place that can capture this type of stuff from your consumers at all hours of the day, a Sunday morning, 3 a.m, for example. How are you going to get that feedback? But on top of it, you need to figure out, well, how do you standardize that procedure? As soon as that call comes in, what questions are you going to ask, right? How are you going to train your people to ask those questions and to also do it in a demeanor that isn't threatening, right? That is high in customer service, even though this is a very serious issue, right? And then what information to collect. And we got to remember too, that FDA is going to be asking you information potentially. Health Canada may be asking for very specific information as well. So you have to think about all the things, lot numbers, maybe where the sample is, what else that person was eating. There's all these other questions you have to consider, and you need to standardize that into a procedure for the people that you assign this customer service role to. And that could be yourself in this early stage of the game. Remember that this information is going to be used for investigation purposes, right? Obviously, if they found a piece of glass, you don't want glass in your product. You need to go figure out how it got there. So there's key information you need to procure from the consumer so that it's going to help with your manufacturers to further their investigation and hopefully find the source of this glass. So it's really important to think, okay, this is something that you need to worry about in terms of how to collect this information from your consumers, how to give them a mechanism to reach out to you to deal with these not happy situations, not great situations. And you have to realize that you can't rely on your contract manufacturers. This is something that's on you. This is your company. This is your brand. They can't go to your manufacturer. Chances are you're not disclosing your manufacturer, right? So they're going to go to you for this information. All right. So those are really quick 5 things I really want to highlight, hopefully to help you guys think about and build your business and consider some of these things. I know a lot of you are really focused in your marketing, your website, your logo, your brand, your product, your formula, all these things that are on the more fun side, right? But you have to factor these other things that a lot of people do not foresee until it's too late. If you're looking for someone to guide you through, to advise you through all of this, I'd be more than happy to do that. I'll have a link in the description down below. Definitely say hello, reach out to me through my email, and we'll set something up. Talk to you later. Cheers.